The Christmas dinner table had been arranged with mathematical precision by my mother, who believed proper place settings could somehow elevate our family's social standing. Sarah commanded the seat of honor to Dad's right, wearing a charcoal Armani blazer that probably cost more than my monthly warehouse salary. Her startup, TechFlow Solutions, had completed what she constantly referred to as their Series B funding round, venture capital terminology she wielded like a weapon in every family conversation for the past 6 months. The due diligence process was absolutely brutal, Sarah declared, adjusting her designer watch as she carved her prime rib. 3 months of investors crawling through every aspect of our business model. Financial projections, technology architecture, competitive analysis, management team credentials. Most startups crack under that kind of scrutiny. Cousin Marcus leaned forward with obvious admiration. But TechFlow survived the process? More than survived, Sarah smiled triumphantly. The lead investor called our AI integration platform revolutionary. They said they'd never seen market penetration analytics like ours in the enterprise software space. Uncle Robert raised his wine glass with ceremonial gravity. To Sarah, the first legitimate entrepreneur this family has ever produced. The crystal clinked enthusiastically around the table. Everyone participated in the toast except me. I remained seated at the far corner, still wearing my warehouse uniform because I'd driven straight from my evening shift. The polyester shirt with Dave embroidered above the breast pocket felt particularly shabby under the dining room's elaborate chandelier. Dave should be taking notes, Dad announced with paternal condescension. Maybe he'll absorb some business wisdom through osmosis. Sarah set down her fork with theatrical precision, clearly preparing for a moment she'd been orchestrating all evening. Actually, Dad, that comment perfectly illustrates something important I wanted to discuss with everyone tonight. The room fell silent with anticipation. Mom paused mid-bite, sensing drama approaching. I've been analyzing our family's collective financial trajectory, Sarah continued, producing her phone and swiping to what appeared to be a professionally designed presentation. I believe we need to implement a more strategic approach to family decision-making going forward. She held up her phone, displaying a polished slide titled Family Wealth Assessment Matrix Q4 Analysis. As successful individuals, we have a responsibility to optimize our collaborative potential. That means focusing our strategic discussions on members who can contribute meaningfully to our shared economic advancement. Uncle Robert nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. Time is money in business. Sarah swiped to the next slide, which featured a bar graph ranking each family member by what she called annual economic impact contribution. The visualization looked professionally rendered, complete with gradient colors and statistical projections. Let me walk everyone through the data, Sarah announced, producing a laser pointer from her blazer pocket. Uncle Robert's construction empire generates approximately $2.3 million in annual revenue, with profit margins consistently exceeding industry standards. The red dot illuminated Robert's name at the top of the chart. He straightened in his chair with visible pride. Dad's accounting practice maintains a client portfolio worth $1.8 million annually, with exceptional retention rates and expansion potential in the corporate tax preparation sector. Dad beamed as the laser highlighted his position on the graph. Mom's real estate investment portfolio produces $900,000 in passive income yearly, with appreciating asset values in 3 key metropolitan markets. Mom actually blushed at the recognition. Sarah, you've really done your homework. Marcus just earned promotion to regional sales director at his pharmaceutical company. That translates to $450,000 in annual compensation, plus performance bonuses that could push him well into 6-figure territory. Marcus raised his glass in appreciation. The research phase paid off, apparently. Sarah continued through the family roster, assigning specific dollar values to everyone's professional achievements and investment portfolios. Each person received detailed analysis of their economic contributions, complete with growth projections and strategic recommendations. And finally, Sarah paused dramatically, allowing the laser pointer to drift toward the bottom of her chart. We have Dave. The red dot landed on a bar so small it barely registered on the graph scale. Warehouse operations specialist. $38,000 annual salary, no performance bonuses, no advancement track. Zero investment portfolio, no real estate holdings, no business ventures, no strategic partnerships. Essentially no measurable contribution to collective family wealth generation. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I continued eating my dinner, focusing on the perfectly prepared vegetables Mom had spent hours preparing. Now, I want to emphasize that everyone has value, Sarah added quickly, though her tone suggested otherwise. But from a purely strategic standpoint, family meetings should prioritize discussions that require genuine business sophistication. Cousin Jenny shifted uncomfortably. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah clicked to her final slide. Optimized family governance structure implementation timeline. Starting next quarter, our strategic planning sessions will be limited to contributing members only. People who understand market dynamics, investment strategies, profit optimization, scaling methodologies. People who speak fluent business. She gestured around the table with her laser pointer. Everyone here except Dave operates in high-level professional environments. You understand equity structures, valuation models, competitive positioning, stakeholder management. Uncle Robert nodded thoughtfully. It makes sense. Strategic discussions require strategic minds. Exactly, Sarah continued. Dave works an hourly position in a warehouse. He punches a time clock, follows assembly procedures, takes lunch breaks when a bell rings. That's fine for what it is, but it doesn't translate to understanding venture capital dynamics or market penetration strategies. She looked directly at me for the first time all evening, her expression mixing pity with determination. No offense, Dave, but when we're discussing portfolio diversification or acquisition targets or IPO timing, those conversations would be completely over your head. You'd be sitting there confused while everyone else engages in sophisticated business dialogue. That makes sense, I replied calmly, returning my attention to my plate. See. Sarah smiled with obvious satisfaction. Dave understands his limitations. He's not interested in pretending he belongs in discussions about things he doesn't comprehend. Dad cleared his throat approvingly. So how would this work practically? Sarah clicked back to her implementation timeline. Regular family gatherings continue as normal, birthdays, holidays, casual dinners. Everyone participates in social events. But strategic business meetings, investment discussions, wealth management planning sessions, those become contributor exclusive. When would these meetings happen? Mom asked. I was thinking monthly, rotating between our offices and homes. Next week, for instance, I could host everyone at TechFlow's headquarters downtown. Show you our development labs, introduce you to our advisory board, demonstrate our proprietary algorithms. Marcus looked intrigued. What kind of topics would we cover? Everything from family investment pooling to collaborative business ventures. Uncle Robert might have construction projects that need financing. Dad could help with corporate tax strategies for everyone's businesses. Mom knows commercial real estate better than anyone. She warmed to her theme, clearly having planned this presentation extensively. We could establish a family investment fund, coordinate our purchasing power for better rates on everything from insurance to legal services. Maybe even explore joint ventures, technology solutions for Robert's construction sites, accounting software integration for Dad's practice. What about profit sharing? Robert asked practically. Based on contribution levels, naturally. The people bringing real capital and expertise to the table would see proportional returns on collaborative investments. Jenny glanced at me apologetically. And Dave would just not participate? Sarah shrugged with practiced nonchalance. Dave benefits indirectly from family wealth optimization, obviously. Rising tides lift all boats. But direct participation in strategic decisions requires actual business acumen. She turned back to me with what she probably thought was kindness. Dave, you're welcome to observe sometimes if you're interested. Think of it as informal business education. You might learn something useful for your own career development. I appreciate the offer, I said quietly. Perfect, Sarah declared, clearly pleased with how smoothly her presentation was being received. I'll send calendar invites to everyone who qualified for the contributor track. First meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. As she began packing up her presentation materials, Sarah launched into detailed descriptions of TechFlow's recent achievements. The $40 million in Series B funding had exceeded all expectations, apparently. 3 Fortune 500 companies were piloting their enterprise solutions. Their artificial intelligence algorithms were generating unprecedented customer engagement metrics. The scalability potential is extraordinary, Sarah explained, warming to her favorite subject. We're projecting 400% revenue growth in Q1 alone, with expansion into Austin and Seattle markets by summer. How do you manage cash flow with that kind of rapid scaling? Dad inquired, genuinely curious. That's the beauty of having serious institutional investors, Sarah replied confidently. When you've got $40 million in committed capital, cash flow management becomes much more straightforward. We're running about $2.8 million monthly burn rate, but that's completely expected during our growth phase. She pulled up what appeared to be financial projections on her phone, displaying impressive charts and graphs to anyone close enough to see. The investors conducted exhaustive due diligence before committing this level of funding. Background checks, technology audits, market analysis, competitive landscape assessment. When Pinnacle Venture Capital writes a check this size, they've done their homework. Mom looked genuinely amazed. $40 million. I still can't quite believe it. The negotiation process was intense, Sarah admitted modestly. Pinnacle's partners are notoriously selective. They typically only fund companies with proven management teams and revolutionary technology platforms. She glanced meaningfully around the table. My computer science background from MIT and my previous experience in Google's AI division really distinguished TechFlow from other startups competing for their attention. Cousin Jenny looked puzzled. Wait, I thought you studied communications at State University? Sarah waved dismissively. I completed additional coursework through MIT's executive education program, plus extensive professional development at Google. Same technical foundation, really. The conversation continued for another hour, with Sarah providing increasingly detailed explanations of venture capital dynamics, artificial intelligence applications, and her company's proprietary technological advantages. Everyone listened with rapt attention, asking sophisticated questions about market positioning and competitive differentiation. I finished my dinner in comfortable silence, occasionally nodding when someone made eye contact, but primarily just observing the family's genuine fascination with Sarah's entrepreneurial success story. The most exciting development, Sarah concluded as Mom began serving her famous apple pie, is that several board members want me to consider launching my own venture capital fund eventually. Give back to the entrepreneur community, mentor the next generation of innovative startups. Your own venture fund? Dad looked impressed. What kind of capital commitment would something like that require? Probably start modestly, maybe $50 or $60 million for the initial fund, Sarah replied as casually as discussing lunch plans. But with the right limited partners and a solid track record, you can scale to hundreds of millions pretty quickly. Limited partners? Mom asked. The institutional investors who provide capital to venture funds, Sarah explained patiently. Pension funds, university endowments, family offices, sovereign wealth funds. That's where the real money originates. As family members began gathering their coats and preparing to leave, Sarah made a point of distributing business cards for TechFlow Solutions. The cards featured embossed lettering and what appeared to be a holographic company logo. I'll have my executive assistant send formal invitations for next week's meeting, she announced, carefully avoiding eye contact with me. Contributors only, of course. After everyone departed, I helped Mom load the dishwasher and wrap leftover food. She couldn't stop talking about Sarah's incredible achievements and wondering aloud how one daughter could be so naturally brilliant with technology and business, while her son was content with such a simple life. I drove home to my modest one-bedroom apartment, took a long shower and settled into my home office chair. The evening had unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. Sarah had been building toward this formal exclusion for months, gradually establishing herself as the family's resident business expert while positioning me as the well-meaning but financially naive younger brother. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. Thanks for being so understanding tonight. I know the contributor thing might seem harsh, but it's really about maximizing everyone's potential. Most people in your position would probably feel jealous or resentful. Shows real emotional maturity on your part. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I typed back simply, "Congratulations on everything you've accomplished." Then I opened my encrypted laptop and composed a secure email to my longtime attorney, Michael Chin, who had been managing my private business affairs for the past 8 years. "Michael, please execute immediate termination of funding agreement TF 2024, A per section 15.3 of the dissolution clause. Effective tomorrow morning at market open, discontinue all capital transfers to TechFlow Solutions. Implement standard 48-hour wind-down protocol as outlined in our previous discussions. All documentation should reference the predetermined termination triggers we established." I copied my portfolio manager at Meridian Capital Management. "Patricia, execute termination order for TechFlow Solutions funding effective 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Reference Michael Chin at Chin and Associates for complete legal documentation. All $40 million in committed capital should be withdrawn immediately per our original agreement structure. Please confirm execution by end of business day." The messages showed as delivered at 11:52 p.m. I poured myself a glass of water and reviewed some quarterly reports from my other investments. Tomorrow was going to be an interesting day for Sarah's business empire. At exactly 7:30 a.m. my phone started ringing. Sarah's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it roll to voicemail. The second call came at 7:47. Then 8:15. By 9:45 a.m., I had 14 missed calls and 23 increasingly frantic text messages. The first voicemail was confused but controlled. "Dave, something really weird is happening with our investors. They're saying there's some kind of problem with our funding agreement. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, but could you call me back when you get this?" The second voicemail, recorded 20 minutes later, was noticeably more agitated. "Dave, I really need you to call me back immediately. The lawyers are saying our primary investor triggered some kind of termination clause. This doesn't make any sense. We had ironclad contracts with guaranteed funding for 18 months. By the third voicemail, Sarah was clearly panicking. "Dave, please call me back right now. Something terrible is happening. The bank froze all our corporate accounts. They're saying the investor withdrew authorization for all future transfers. We have payroll processing today and I don't understand what's going on." The text messages showed a clear progression from professional confusion to personal desperation. "Dave, call me, this is urgent business emergency. Something's seriously wrong with our funding situation. The lawyers won't explain what's happening with the contracts. Dave, please call me back, I'm really scared. I think someone's deliberately trying to destroy TechFlow. The entire staff is asking questions I can't answer. Dave, I know we haven't been close lately, but I really need family right now. This is the worst day of my entire life." At 10:20 a.m. Mom called. "Dave, honey," Sarah phoned me crying hysterically. "Something devastating happened overnight with her company. The investors pulled out completely with no warning. Do you know anything about business law? Maybe there's some way you could help her figure out what went wrong." "I don't really understand that kind of sophisticated financial stuff," I replied honestly. "She worked so incredibly hard building that company. I can't comprehend how investors can just change their minds like that without any explanation." At 11:35 a.m. Sarah called again. This time I answered. "Dave," she sobbed into the phone, her voice raw from crying. "Oh, thank God you picked up. Something absolutely horrible happened. Someone completely destroyed my company overnight." "What do you mean destroyed?" I asked calmly. "The investor, the one who gave us the $40 million, they terminated our entire agreement. Just like that. No explanation, no warning, no negotiation. The lawyers are saying there was some clause buried in our contracts that allowed them to withdraw all funding with only 48 hours notice." "That seems like an unusual contract structure," I observed. "That's exactly what I said. It doesn't make any business sense. We went through months of due diligence, we had comprehensive legal protections, we had guaranteed funding commitments. How can someone just decide to take back $40 million? I could hear her hyperventilating between sentences. Sarah tried to breathe slowly. "What exactly did the lawyers explain about this termination clause?" "They said our primary investor, some entity called Meridian Holdings, exercised a unilateral termination provision. But Dave, I don't even remember signing anything with Meridian Holdings. Our investor was supposed to be Pinnacle Venture Capital. Maybe Pinnacle works through subsidiary companies?" I suggested. That's what I thought initially, but when I called Pinnacle directly, they told me they've never heard of TechFlow Solutions. They have zero records of any investment discussions, no documentation, no contact history. Nothing. Sarah paused and I could hear papers rustling in the background. Dave, I'm starting to think someone was impersonating legitimate investors this entire time. I think someone created fake companies and fake contracts and gave us fake money, then took it all back just to watch us collapse. Why would anyone go through such elaborate deception? I have no idea, she wailed. Maybe industrial espionage? Maybe a competitor wanted to steal our technology? Maybe someone with a personal vendetta against me? The lawyers are saying it might constitute fraud, but they can't trace the ownership structure of Meridian Holdings. At 1:45 p.m. Uncle Robert called. Dave, your sister called me about some kind of business disaster. Apparently her investors pulled out overnight. She's asking if I know any lawyers who specialize in investment fraud. Do you have any idea what might have happened? Not really, I said. Sarah knows much more about business than I do. This whole situation sounds extremely suspicious. Legitimate venture capital firms don't just evaporate $40 million without proper legal procedures. At 2:30 p.m., my attorney Michael called to confirm completion of the termination process. Everything executed exactly as planned, he reported professionally. TechFlow's corporate accounts have been frozen, all funding agreements officially terminated, all future capital commitments voided. Ms. Sarah Martinez received proper legal notification through established channels. Any complications with the dissolution? None whatsoever. The contracts you instructed me to draft 18 months ago were completely airtight. She signed every document, including the 48-hour termination clause requiring no cause or justification. Everything was perfectly legal and precisely documented. What about the Meridian Holdings entity? Dissolved according to plan. All corporate documentation sealed for 7 years per Nevada privacy statutes. No traceable connections to any of your other business entities or personal assets. That evening around 6 p.m. Sarah called one final time. Dave, I need to ask you something personal and please don't take this the wrong way. Okay. Last night at dinner when everyone was laughing about the business meeting exclusion thing, you seemed, I don't know, unusually calm. Most people would have been angry or hurt or embarrassed. I wasn't angry, I said truthfully. But weren't you at least hurt? When I basically announced that you weren't smart enough to participate in family business discussions anymore. I considered this carefully. Sarah, you made a decision based on what you genuinely believed was best for everyone involved. I can respect that reasoning. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear her breathing slowly on the other end of the line. Dave, do you think this could be karma? Like the universe somehow punishing me for being cruel to you? I don't really believe in cosmic justice, I replied. Because if this is some kind of karmic retribution, I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. I never meant to hurt your feelings. I was so proud of what I thought I'd accomplished, and I wanted respect from everyone in the family, and I thought excluding you would make me seem more professional. Sarah, you don't need to apologize for being successful. But I wasn't actually successful, she cried. None of it was real. Someone was manipulating me this entire time. They gave me fake money and let me pretend to be important and brilliant, then they took it all away just to humiliate me in front of everyone. I'm genuinely sorry this happened to you. The absolute worst part is that I have to face everyone at next week's family meeting. I have to explain that there is no company, there never was $40 million in real funding, and I'm not the brilliant entrepreneur I pretended to be. She started sobbing again, deep wrenching sounds that made my chest tighten with sympathy. Dave, will you please come to the meeting? I know I said you weren't qualified to participate, but I can't face everyone alone. I need at least one person there who won't judge me. Of course I'll be there, I said immediately. Thank you, Dave. Maybe you could sit next to me this time? Instead of way down at the end of the table where I banished you. If that's what you want. The family meeting had been scheduled for the following Tuesday at Sarah's downtown office. Except Sarah no longer maintained an office downtown. The building's management company had terminated her lease that morning when TechFlow's bank accounts were frozen and rent payments bounced. Instead, we reconvened in Mom and Dad's living room. Sarah sat curled up on the sofa looking like she hadn't slept in a week. wearing faded jeans and an oversized sweater instead of her usual designer business attire. As promised, I took the seat directly beside her. "I have some very difficult news to share with everyone," Sarah began, her voice barely audible. "TechFlow Solutions no longer exists." The room immediately erupted in confused questions and concerned murmurs. Sarah held up her hand weakly, requesting silence. "Let me explain what happened as best as I understand it," she continued. "Yesterday morning, our investors withdrew all funding with no advance warning. $40 million simply disappeared from our accounts overnight." Uncle Robert leaned forward, frowning. "How is that legally possible?" "Apparently there were clauses in our contracts that I didn't fully comprehend when I signed them. The investor had the right to terminate our agreement with 48 hours notice, for any reason or no reason at all." Dad looked stunned. "Sarah, how do you sign a $40 million contract without understanding the termination provisions?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm not actually as smart about business as I pretended to be. I was so desperate to seem successful and sophisticated that I signed documents I didn't really understand." "But you said Pinnacle Venture Capital had done extensive due diligence," Marcus protested. "You showed us all those financial projections and growth charts." "That's the other problem," Sarah whispered. "When I contacted Pinnacle directly, they told me they've never heard of TechFlow Solutions. They have no record of ever meeting with me, no documentation of any investment discussions." The room fell into shocked silence. "So who gave you the $40 million? Jenny asked quietly. "Some company called Meridian Holdings apparently. But my lawyers can't find any public information about them. No corporate website, no business registration, no contact information. It's like they never existed." Mom looked confused and frightened. "Sarah, what are you saying?" Sarah took a shaky breath. "I think someone created an elaborate fake investment scheme specifically to deceive me. They impersonated legitimate venture capitalists, provided fake funding, let me build a fake company, then took it all away to humiliate me." "But why?" Robert asked. "Who would go to such extreme lengths?" "I have no idea," Sarah admitted. "Maybe someone who knew I was lying about my background and wanted to teach me a lesson. Maybe a competitor who wanted to steal our technology ideas. Maybe just someone who thought it would be entertaining to watch me fail spectacularly." She looked around the room at her family's shocked faces. "The truth is, I was never qualified to run a tech company. I lied about my education, exaggerated my work experience, and pretended to understand things that were completely beyond my abilities." "What do you mean, lied about your education?" Dad demanded. Sarah's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I never took any courses at MIT. I have a communications degree from State University and I worked in Google's campus cafeteria, not their AI division. I fabricated most of my resume because I thought it would help me attract investors." The silence stretched painfully. I could feel Sarah trembling beside me on the couch. "So what happens now?" Mom asked gently. "I need to find a real job," Sarah said. "And figure out how to pay back everyone I borrowed money from while I thought I was rich. And somehow rebuild my life from nothing." She turned to look at me with red, swollen eyes. "Dave, I owe you a massive apology. Everything I said last night about you not being smart enough for business discussions was projection. I was the one who didn't understand anything. You were the only person who never seemed impressed by my fake success story." "When did I seem unimpressed?" I asked, genuinely confused. "You never asked questions about the company like everyone else did. You never wanted to visit our offices or meet our investors. Even when everyone was praising my achievements, you just listened politely without getting excited." She wiped her eyes with a tissue Mom handed her. "I think part of me knew you could see through the whole charade and that scared me. So I excluded you from the business meetings because I was afraid you might ask questions I couldn't answer." "I thought you were doing well," I said honestly. "I was happy for your success." "No, you weren't. You were just too kind to embarrass me by pointing out the obvious problems with my story. You knew something was wrong, but you never said anything because you didn't want to hurt my feelings." She addressed the entire room through her tears. "I want everyone to understand that Dave tried to be supportive even while I was treating him horribly. He congratulated me on achievements that he probably knew were fake. He never tried to undermine my confidence or make me feel stupid, even when I was making a complete fool of myself." "Sarah, I said gently. You're being too hard on yourself. No, I'm not. I spent 6 months bragging about money that wasn't mine, expertise I didn't possess, and accomplishments that were completely fictional. The entire time I was treating my own brother like he was too stupid to understand business, when actually I was the one who understood nothing. She straightened up slightly on the couch, addressing everyone with as much dignity as she could manage. Starting immediately, there are no more contributor requirements for family meetings. Everyone participates equally, regardless of income or education or job title. Family meetings are for family, period. Uncle Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Sarah, we all make mistakes. This doesn't change how we feel about you as a person. It should change how you feel about me, Sarah replied. Because the person you've been admiring for 6 months doesn't actually exist. I'm not a successful entrepreneur. I'm not brilliant with technology. I don't understand venture capital or artificial intelligence or any of the sophisticated business concepts I pretended to master. She looked directly at each family member in turn. I'm just someone who got completely in over her head and was too proud and scared to admit it or ask for help. The meeting concluded with family members offering various forms of support and encouragement. Several people mentioned job opportunities they might be able to help arrange. Mom insisted that Sarah move back home temporarily to save money while she rebuilt her life. After everyone else had left, Sarah asked if she could walk me to my car. Dave, can I ask you something really personal? Sure. How do you manage to stay so calm and patient when people treat you badly? Even when I was being genuinely cruel about the business meeting exclusion, you never got angry or defensive. I thought about her question for a moment. I try not to take things personally. Most of the time, people aren't trying to hurt me specifically, they're just dealing with their own insecurities and problems. Even when I was publicly humiliating you in front of the entire family, you weren't trying to humiliate me. You were trying to establish credibility and respect from people whose opinions matter to you. That's completely understandable. Sarah stopped walking and stared at me. Dave, you're either the most forgiving person who ever lived or you're hiding something significant. What do you mean? I mean, normal people would be furious. They'd want revenge or at least a sincere apology and some groveling. But you're acting like nothing happened. You did apologize, I pointed out. After I lost everything and desperately needed your support. That doesn't count as a real apology. We reached my Honda Civic, which looked exactly like the modest vehicle a warehouse worker should drive. Sarah, the last thing you need right now is to worry about whether you hurt my feelings 6 months ago. Focus your energy on rebuilding your life and career. She hugged me suddenly, fiercely, desperately. I love you, Dave. I'm so sorry I forgot that for a while. I love you too. As I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, I reflected on the evening's events. Sarah would recover from this setback, probably emerging stronger and more authentic than before. The family would process the drama and move forward. And I would continue my routine of working at the warehouse, attending family gatherings, and managing my private investment portfolio through carefully constructed legal entities that no one would ever connect to Dave Martinez, the quiet brother who punches a time clock and keeps his opinions to himself. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia at Meridian Capital Management. Tech flow termination executed successfully. $40 million returned to your primary investment fund. Shall I begin reviewing new opportunities in the tech startup space? I typed back, not yet. Let's wait a few months before making any major moves. Some lessons are worth $40 million. But teaching them to family requires patience, precision, and perfect timing.